The year is 1809, and in Hardin, Kentucky, there's this boy born to this poor family that could barely scrape by. They lived out in the country. They had nothing. And within the first 10 years of this boy's life, they had to move from Kentucky to the state of Indiana, just a little bit north because of a land dispute. And the little bit that this poor family had, they completely lost. They go to Indiana and they start their life over again. And this is the first time for this little boy, who's now about 9, 10 years old, that he gets to go to school for the very first time in his life. But unfortunately, all they could do was 1 year, because then he had to help. He had to help make money and to raise his siblings and to just help take care of the rest of the family. But this little boy loved learning. That 1 year of school lit a fire within him. And he would pull any book he could get his hands on, whether it was science or history or politics or whatever. This young boy started consuming all this knowledge, all this information, because of that 1 year of school. At that time, he ended up having to become a store clerk and then a surveyor. He worked for the post office. He did all these little odd jobs in order just to make enough money to have for his family to just survive. This young kid, this young boy, this young man who nobody really knew. It got me thinking about this character we hear on this fourth weekend of Lent, which is King David. But before he was King David, he was just little David. And before he was just even David that anybody knew, nobody knew him. We hear in the first book of Samuel, which is the book about the kings of Israel, and we hear that God is sending the prophet Samuel to a town of Bethlehem. So Bethlehem might ring a bell, right? We know it as where Jesus was born, but before Jesus was born there, it is where Jesse and his 8 sons lived. Jesse was he had flocks, he had sheep, and his sons helped him do that. And so Samuel goes to the town of Bethlehem because God had sent this prophet Samuel, because God says there's a king of Israel is going to be from the house of Jesse, and one of his sons is going to be king. So Samuel shows up, and Jesse shows his 7 sons to Samuel, the prophet. And Samuel, we hear, being a man, thinking in human terms, says one of these will definitely be the king. They're well put together. They're manly men. They one of these are kingly material. And God says to Samuel, none of these are whom I choose. So Samuel looks at Jesse, the father, and says, do you have any other sons? And Jesse's like, oh yeah, I have my youngest. He's out tending the sheep. He's out as a shepherd. And Samuel says, well, I can't go until you bring him. So they call David, who was completely forgotten about, and they bring him in. And as soon as he walks in, God tells Samuel he is the one. That's the key for us. Oftentimes, we don't think in God's terms, but in human terms. So oftentimes, the one whom we think is not the one whom God has chosen, and the one whom we don't think is the one God has chosen, and oftentimes that's you and I. It reminds me of that great phrase that maybe you've heard a lot, is God doesn't call the equipped, but he equips those whom he calls. This is a great example all down through the saints and in the scriptures. This is a case for David. This little boy, this shepherd boy, is called to be king of Israel and becomes the greatest of all kings. And we see how God works his power through people like this. As St. Paul says, it's in my weakness that the power of God, the power of Jesus, is made manifest. Because I know it's not from me. It has to be from him. And that's what we see in the gospel as well. We have this great story of the man born blind. Born blind. We might miss that as Christians, but when the Old Testament talks about from birth or born this way, what they're saying is this man was born completely into sin. And we hear that later on in the scriptures. He's born completely into sin, which almost makes him less human, is how you could maybe think about it or view it. And we hear that as the story progresses, Jesus restores his sight, gives him sight, but then the scribes and the Pharisees don't give him any credit, saying, like, you can't talk to us even. You're not even able to talk to us because you were born completely into sin, because sin manifests itself in the physical ailments in the scriptures. You're completely born into sin. But remember, it's in my weakness that the power of God is made manifest. God oftentimes chooses those whom, on human terms, we do not think should be chosen or have the ability, but God chooses them. This man in the gospel, God chose him so his power, the power of Jesus, can be manifested through him. We see this all over the place. We see this with Peter, the first pope, the great apostle, right? He's a fisherman, he's a nobody. And then all throughout the Gospels, we have these highs and lows with Peter. We have him saying, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And then other times we have him running away in fear when Jesus needs him the most. We have the ups and downs, but God still chose him. Or I think of my favorite saint, Mother Teresa, this Albanian woman who ends up changing the direction of the world, especially of India, but everybody knows her and she has done absolutely amazing things she did, and nobody would have chosen her. This little Albanian woman that became a nun, but God chose her. And now God is choosing you. If we're honest with ourselves, when we feel called, when we feel that the Lord is putting something in our heart, the first thing we oftentimes say to ourselves is, I can't do it. I can't publicly speak. I can't talk about my faith. I don't have the time to help the poor. I have my family. I have my job. I have a million other things. We find all these excuses, but if we whittle it down, it comes down oftentimes to that very core part of, I'm not able to. And that's what David could have said. That is what the man born blind could have said. That is what Peter could have said. That's what Mother Teresa could have said. Just go down the list. But God doesn't call the equipped. He equips those whom he calls. God doesn't choose in human terms who we think he should, but he chooses those whom he wants to. And he's calling you. And so as we celebrate this fourth week of Lent, he's calling you to do something amazing. He has some call for you that's uniquely just for you. And that's the beautiful part about our faith is we're collectively the body of Christ, but in a very unique way, God made you and he has called you because of your gifts, because of your talents, because of your heart. We see this all the time. That little boy born in 1809 in Hardin, Kentucky, has 1 year of education, ends up passing the bar exam and becomes a lawyer with 1 year of formal education because of his love and knowledge and just reading and all these things. He becomes a lawyer in Illinois. He gets into politics, and you and I know him as Abraham Lincoln, the president who abolishes slavery. In 1860, he is elected to the highest office of the land. Somebody whom nobody would have expected. This poor kid from Hardin, Kentucky, ends up in the White House. Oftentimes, that is what happens. God chooses those whom we could never expect, but he equips us. God bless.